The registration hall on Kepler Station smelled like burnt coffee and bureaucratic indifference. Selveth Tenora stood beneath harsh lighting that made her lavender skin look almost grey, clutching a bouquet of synthetic crimson roses that some well-meaning protocol droid had shoved into her hands. The flowers were programmed to never wilt. She found that detail particularly cruel. 34 steps to the exit. She had counted them twice. Her golden hair hung loose past her shoulders, a violation of Volanti tradition for an unbonded woman. But tradition had stopped mattering 6 standard weeks ago when the Terran colonial authority seized her family's mining rights on Dustfall. 3 generations of Tenora labor, 3 generations of coaxing precious minerals from that rust-colored rock, erased by a signature on a foreclosure document. Across the registration podium stood Donatello Holden, 52 years old by Terran count, though he carried those years like a man who had fought for every single one. Silver-streaked hair cropped short, a face that had been weathered by too many suns on too many worlds, wearing a long brown coat that looked like it had survived as many frontier skirmishes as its owner. He owned the largest independent mining operation in the Kepler sector, 12,000 hectares of Dustfall's most mineral-rich territory. He also apparently owned her now. The marriage broker, a oily man named Crassus Dane, had appeared at her family's habitat module like a carrion bird sensing death. He had spoken of arrangements, of mutual benefits, of how Mr. Holden needed a wife and how the Tenora family needed their debts cleared. Her father, Delegate Vanen, had wept when he transmitted the agreement, but he had transmitted it anyway. No one had asked Selveth what she wanted. "State your intentions for the record," the registration official droned, not looking up from his terminal. Donatello cleared his throat. When he spoke, his voice carried the grit of someone who had spent decades breathing asteroid dust. "I will honor this bond. I will, not I do." Selveth's secondary eyelids flickered, a Volanthi stress response she couldn't suppress. That phrasing meant something different. I do was statement of fact. I will was a promise of effort. "And you?" The official finally glanced at her, impatient. Her voice emerged as barely a whisper. "I consent to this registration." The official tapped his screen. "Bond registered, congratulations. Next." That was it. No ceremony. No witnesses beyond Dane's smirking face and a bored government functionary. She was now, by the laws of the Terran colonial authority, legally bonded to a human stranger who could do whatever he wished with her. Donatello offered his arm. She stared at it like he was holding a live plasma torch. "The shuttle's waiting," he said quietly. "It's a 6-hour trip to the ranch. You can rest on the way." She placed her fingers on his sleeve with all the enthusiasm of someone touching a venomous creature. His arm was steady beneath the worn fabric, not grabbing, not possessive, just present. They walked through the station toward the docking ring. Crassus Dane fell into step beside them, his voice pitched to carry. "You've made a fine acquisition, Holden. The Volanthi have such graceful figures, don't they? And I hear their women are remarkably—" "Dane." Donatello's single word cut through the air like a blade. "Your fee's been transferred. We're done." Of course. Dane's smile didn't waver. "Merely making conversation, though I should mention, if you find the arrangement unsatisfactory. My services include— Get out of my sight before I decide your fee should cover my medical bills from breaking my knuckles on your teeth." Dane's smile finally cracked. He disappeared into the crowd with impressive speed. Selveth allowed herself one small breath of relief. The shuttle was utilitarian but clean, a cargo hauler converted for passenger use. Donatello showed her to a private cabin with a real bed, not a sleep pod. "There's a lock on the door," he said, pointing to a solid metal deadbolt. "Physical, not electronic. Can't be overridden from outside. He paused. Use it. She stared at him. You haven't eaten today, he continued, as if recommending door locks to terrified brides was perfectly normal. There's food in the galley. I'll be in the cockpit. We don't have to talk until you're ready. He left. She locked the door immediately, then sat on the bed and stared at her trembling hands. 4 fingers plus opposable thumb on each, like humans, but with an additional joint that allowed for finer manipulation. Her grandmother had told her that hands revealed character. Her own hands currently revealed nothing but fear. Through the tiny viewport, stars wheeled as the shuttle detached from the station, taking her further from everything she knew, toward a desert world owned by a silent stranger, toward a life she had not chosen. Dustfall earned its name honestly. The planet's surface was a canvas of rust-red sand and ochre stone, broken occasionally by stubborn vegetation that had somehow adapted to the mineral-heavy soil. The sky hung perpetually amber during daylight hours, and 3 small moons chased each other through the night. Donatello's ranch sprawled across a valley between 2 mountain ranges, not the 12,000 hectares he owned, but the residential compound itself. A main house built from local stone and imported timber, with a wraparound porch that overlooked the landing pad, outbuildings for equipment storage, a greenhouse dome glinting in the afternoon light. Home, Donatello said as the shuttle settled onto the pad. The word sounded rusty in his mouth, like he hadn't used it in years. An elderly human waited by the porch. Murrick, Donatello's foreman for 23 years, with skin like dark leather and a mechanical leg that whirred softly when he walked. He looked at Selveth with open curiosity but no hostility. "Got the guest room ready, boss?" Murrick said. "Stocked it with them dietary supplements you ordered. Hope I got the right kind. The quartermaster at Kepler had about 60 different types for Valanthe." The blue-labeled ones," Selveth said automatically, then flinched at having spoken. Murrick grinned. "Good thing I grabbed those then. Come on, I'll show you around. Boss is terrible at grand tours. Last time he tried to show someone the property, he got distracted by a malfunctioning drill rig and left them standing in the desert for 3 hours." "It was 90 minutes?" Donatello muttered. 3 hours, Murrick repeated firmly. "I was the someone." Despite everything, Selveth felt her mouth twitch towards something that might have been a smile. The house was larger than it appeared from outside, rooms branching off from a central hall. A kitchen bigger than her family's entire habitat, a living area with actual windows that looked out over the valley. Everything was well made but worn, functional rather than decorative. "Your room's up here," Murrick said, leading her up a staircase. "Private bathroom, climate controls so you can set it cooler if you want. I read Valanthe prefer lower temperatures, and this here," he tapped a deadbolt on the inside of the door. "Boss had this installed special. Said to tell you no one's got a key but you." She touched the lock with one finger, heavy, solid, real. "I'll leave you to settle in," Murrick said. "Dinner's at 1900 if you're hungry. If not, I'll leave a plate outside your door." Why is he doing this? The question escaped before she could stop it. Murrick paused in the doorway. "Doing what, miss?" "Being," she gestured vaguely. "He bought me. Like equipment. Like livestock. Why is he acting like I'm a guest?" Murrick's weathered face grew thoughtful. "Donatello's been alone out here a long time. Lost his wife and daughter in the Proxima uprising near on 20 years ago. Man like that, he's got 2 choices. Get mean or get careful. Boss chose careful." He shrugged. "Maybe he just figures everyone deserves a little dignity, even when circumstances steal it from them." He closed the door behind him. Selveth locked it immediately. She did not come down for dinner that night, or the next morning. At noon on the second day, she crept down the stairs to find the kitchen empty. Donatello and Murrick were out at one of the mining sites, and a covered plate waiting on the counter with a note in surprisingly elegant handwriting. "Eat something. You're not a prisoner here. The food was tailored to Valanthi dietary needs. Someone had done research. She ate alone, watching the rust-colored landscape through the window, trying to reconcile this quiet house with the nightmare she had expected. On the third day, voices from downstairs woke her early. "Colony Council's talking again, boss?" Marek's voice, concerned. "Let them talk. They're saying you bought yourself an alien wife like she was a piece of equipment, saying it looks bad for human-Valanthi relations. Since when does the Colony Council care about human-Valanthi relations? Half of them voted against letting Valanthi families buy land in the first place. I'm just saying, people are watching, making judgments. People can make whatever judgments they want." Donatello's voice hardened. "She's my wife. That means she's under my protection. Anyone who has a problem with that can come discuss it with me directly." Selvith pressed her palm against the door. "She's my wife, not my property, not my acquisition. Wife. She had expected to be merchandise, to be traded, used, discarded when convenient. What she had not expected was a man who installed locks for her protection and left meals outside her door and defended her name to strangers. What she did not know how to handle was kindness. "You're not eating enough." Selvith jumped. She had finally ventured outside, drawn by the sight of the greenhouse dome, and Donatello had apparently materialized from nowhere. He stood near a row of tomato plants, wiping his hands on a rag, his expression unreadable. "The supplements are sufficient," she said carefully. "Sufficient isn't thriving. You've lost weight since you arrived. I can see it in your wrists." He nodded toward her hands. "Valanthi bone structure shows malnutrition faster than humans." Marek noticed too. "You're watching me. I'm noticing. There's a difference." He tossed the rag aside. "You don't trust me. That's smart. You don't know me, and the circumstances of our marriage are—" He searched for a word. "Ugly. But starving yourself doesn't fix ugly. It just adds another problem." She wanted to argue. She wanted to summon the cold pride that Valanthi were famous for, to tell this human that she needed nothing from him. Instead, she heard herself ask, "Why did you agree to marry me?" Donatello was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had dropped the gruff edges. "Crassus Dane came to me 2 months ago, said he had a business proposition. A Valanthi family about to lose everything, a young woman of bonding age, a chance to clear their debts in exchange for a marriage contract." He made it sound. He grimaced. "Mutual, practical, 2 parties helping each other. And what did you need help with? I'm getting old." The admission came plainly, without self-pity. "This ranch runs on hard work, and I'm running out of years to work hard. I thought maybe—" He shook his head. "Doesn't matter what I thought. When I saw your face at the registration hall, when I saw you were scared, not resigned, I understood Dane had lied to me. You didn't choose this. Your family sold you to save themselves. My father loves me. I believe he does. But love doesn't always stop people from doing terrible things when they're desperate." Donatello met her eyes directly. "I could have voided the contract right there. Should have, probably. But that would have meant the authority took your family's land anyway, and you'd be left with nothing. No home, no bondmate, no legal standing in Terran space. So, I went through with it. You married me out of pity. I married you because the alternative was watching you fall through the cracks." He picked up a watering tool and began tending to the tomatoes. "The door to this house is open. You can leave whenever you want. Take a shuttle back to Kepler. Find work on a station somewhere. I'll cover your transport costs and give you enough credits to start over. But if you stay—" He paused. "If you stay, I'll spend however many years I've got left trying to make sure you never regret it." Selvith stood frozen among the green plants and artificial sunlight. You just let me leave? You're not property, Miss Tenora. It's Mrs. Holden now, she whispered, only if you want it to be. The echo of his words from the registration hall struck her differently now. Not a dismissal, a door left open. She reached out and touched a tomato plant. The leaves were soft against her fingers. I don't know how to be a wife, she admitted. Valanthy bonds are different. There are rituals, expectations. My mother died before she could teach me. I don't know how to be a husband anymore either. It's been 20 years since I had practice. Donatello almost smiled. Maybe we can figure it out together. No expectations, no demands, just see what grows. He gestured at the greenhouse around them. Most of what I've learned about patience, I learned from plants. They don't care about your schedule or your plans. They grow when they're ready to grow. Push too hard, you kill them. Neglect them, same result. But give them what they need and wait. He touched a ripening tomato. Sometimes you end up with something worth having. Selveth felt something shift in her chest. Not trust, not yet, but the possibility of trust, somewhere down the road. I'll stay, she said, for now. Donatello nodded. For now, works. Time on Dustfall moved slowly. The days stretched long under the amber sky, and the nights spread vast with stars and the wandering lights of 3 small moons. Selveth learned the rhythms of the ranch. She learned that Donatello rose before dawn and worked until sunset, that he took his coffee black and bitter, that he hummed old Earth songs when he thought no one was listening. She learned that Marek had served in the colonial marines for 30 years and had lost his leg to a mining accident, not combat, and was deeply embarrassed about how unglamorous that sounded. She learned that the greenhouse was Donatello's sanctuary, that he had built it with his own hands after his wife died because she had always wanted one, and that he grew tomatoes because they had been his daughter's favorite food. She learned that grief lived in this house like a quiet fourth resident, acknowledged but not discussed. She also learned that the colony of Dustfall was not as welcoming as the landscape. The first time Donatello took her into town, the settlement of Brickstone, 60 kilometers north, she felt the stares like physical weight. Humans watched her from doorways. Whispers followed her through the supply depot. "That's the Valanthy," someone muttered. "Holden's new purchase. Heard he paid off her family's entire debt. Must be nice, getting yourself a wife for the price of a foreclosure." Alien women, though. You know what they say about Valanthy? They say nothing worth repeating. Donatello's voice cut through the chatter. Unless they want to say it to my face. The whisperers found somewhere else to be. You didn't have to do that, Selveth said quietly as they loaded supplies into the transport. Yeah, I did. They'll hate you for defending me. Let them! He secured the last crate. Half of them already hate me for owning so much land. The other half hate me for not selling it to their corporations. At this point, I've got a collection. Adding defends alien wife to the list doesn't cost me anything. She studied him, the set of his jaw, the way his hands moved with steady purpose. You're not what I expected, she said. What did you expect? Someone cruel, someone who would. She couldn't finish. Someone who would treat you like Dane described, like an acquisition to be used. Donatello's voice went flat. I've known men like that, worked for some of them. Back when I was young and stupid, they break everything they touch, including themselves. He climbed into the transport. I decided a long time ago I'd rather build than break. They drove back to the ranch in comfortable silence. That night, Selveth left her door unlocked for the first time. The weeks became months. 3 moons rose and set, marking time in their celestial dance. Selveth discovered she had opinions about the ranch. The accounting system was antiquated. The equipment maintenance schedule was haphazard. The mineral surveys hadn't been updated in 6 years. She mentioned these observations carefully at first, expecting irritation. Instead, Donatello listened, asked questions, implemented her suggestions. "You've got a head for logistics," he said one evening over dinner. "Ever consider working operations for a mining outfit?" "Valanthi women don't work mining operations. Valanthi women don't marry humans either. But here we are." He pushed a data pad across the table. "This is the company structure. Right now I'm listed as sole proprietor. If you want, I can add you as operations partner. Equal authority, equal access, equal ownership." She stared at the documents. "You'd give me half your company. I'm offering you a job. The ownership is just practical. Partners should have stake in what they're building. We're not partners. We're barely what?" She didn't have an answer. They weren't romantic partners. They had separate rooms, separate lives within the same house. But they weren't strangers anymore either. Something had grown in the space between, quiet and undefined. "I'll think about it," she said. She said yes 3 days later. The trouble started with flowers. Donatello had begun leaving small things outside her door, not gifts exactly, useful items. A book on Valanthi poetry he had ordered from a specialty dealer on Kepler Station, a thermal blanket rated for Valanthi body temperatures, supplements in the exact formulation her grandmother had always recommended. Then one morning she found crimson roses, real ones, not synthetic. They must have cost a fortune to transport live from the nearest botanical station. They sat in a simple vase, their petals soft and fragrant, already beginning to wilt. "They'll die in a few days," she said when she found Donatello in the greenhouse. He didn't look up from his tomato plants. Most beautiful things do. "That seems like a waste, does it?" He straightened, brushing soil from his hands. "When my wife was alive, she used to say that temporary things matter more, not less. If you know something won't last forever, you pay better attention to it while it's here." He finally met her eyes. "I figured you deserved something that required attention." Selveth's throat tightened. "Why? Why what? Why are you doing all of this? The flowers, the books, the job offer. You don't have to court me. We're already married." Donatello was quiet for a long moment. "Because you deserve to be courted," he said finally. "What happened at that registration hall, what your father and Dane arranged, that wasn't a marriage. That was a transaction. You deserve someone who chooses you, not because of a contract, but because of who you are. And you think you're choosing me? Hadi, I think I've been choosing you since the moment you put your hand on my arm, and I felt you trembling." His voice roughened. "I think I choose you every morning when I wake up, and find a reason to make this place feel more like your home. I think I'm terrified that one day you'll decide you've healed enough to leave, and I'll have to let you go because that's what I promised." He took a breath. "I think I'm falling in love with you, Selveth Tenora Holden, and I think that scares me more than anything has scared me in 20 years. The greenhouse fell silent except for the soft drone of the irrigation system. Selveth stepped forward. Then again, she stopped within arm's reach, close enough to see the hope and fear warring in his expression. "Valanthi don't fall in love," she said quietly. His face began to close off. "We choose love," she continued. "We assess, we evaluate, we decide. Falling implies accident. My people believe love should be deliberate." "And have you deliberated?" She reached out and touched his face. Her extra-jointed fingers traced the lines beside his eyes, the weathered texture of his skin. Human physiology was so different from her own, warm where Valanthi ran cool, rough where her people were smooth. "I'm still deliberating," she admitted, "but I'm no longer afraid of the conclusion." Donatello's hand came up to cover hers. His palm was warm, calloused from years of work. "I can wait," he said, "as long as you need." "I know," She leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his, a Valanthy gesture of trust. "That's why I'm almost ready." The Colony Council came for them on a Tuesday. 3 official transports landed on the ranch pad, carrying 2 council representatives, a colonial authority officer and a news drone operator who looked far too excited about the proceedings. Mr. Holden, Council Representative Fenmore, stepped off the lead transport with the expression of a man about to deliver bad news and enjoy it. "We've received complaints from concerned citizens regarding your domestic situation." Donatello stood on the porch, Selveth beside him. Murrick had positioned himself near the equipment shed, hand resting casually near his sidearm. "What domestic situation would that be, Fenmore?" "The irregular nature of your marriage to the Valanthy woman." Fenmore's smile was thin. "Several colonists have raised concerns about coercion, about debt manipulation, about possible violations of interspecies bonding regulations. My marriage was registered legally on Kepler Station. Legally, perhaps, but ethically." Fenmore spread his hands. "The colonial authority has a duty to investigate when there's evidence of exploitation." Selveth stepped forward. "No one is being exploited here." Fenmore's eyes slid to her dismissively. "With respect, Mrs. Holden, individuals in coercive situations often don't recognize their own victimization. We're here to protect you." "Protect me from what? A husband who respects me? A home where I'm treated as an equal? A partnership where my voice matters?" Her secondary eyelids flickered with anger. "Where was the colonial authority's protection when Crassus Dane manipulated my family into this arrangement? Where were these concerned citizens when my father had to choose between his land and his daughter? The circumstances of your marriage, the circumstances of my marriage, are exactly what I've made of them." She felt Donatello's hand on her shoulder, steadying. "Mr. Holden did not buy me. He paid my family's debt and then spent every day since proving he deserved my trust. That's not coercion, Representative. That's courtship." Fenmore's smile curdled. "Nevertheless, the Council has voted to conduct a formal review of... Then the Council can review this." Donatello reached into his coat and produced a data chip. He tossed it to Fenmore, who caught it reflexively. "What's this?" "Documentation, legal and notarized." Donatello's voice carried across the gathering crowd. "Yesterday I transferred 40% of my company's assets to Selveth Tenora Holden. Land rights, mineral claims, water access, equipment, all in her name. Additionally, I've established a trust in her family's name that clears any residual debt and provides perpetual income from 20% of our mineral revenues." Fenmore stared at the chip. "This is worth approximately 61 million credits by current market valuation." Donatello met the representative's eyes. "Which means my wife is now the wealthiest Valanthy landholder in Terran colonial space. She doesn't need my money, my protection, or my name. If she wants to leave tomorrow, she can buy her own transport, establish her own colony, and never think about me again." He paused. "But she's not going to, because she chooses to stay. And that choice is hers, not yours, not the Council's, and certainly not some bureaucratic busybody's." The news drone operator was practically vibrating with excitement. This was going to be the biggest story in the sector. "You can't just," Fenmore sputtered. "Can't just what? Give my wife financial independence? Treat her as a partner rather than property?" Donatello smiled without warmth. "Tell me, Representative, do you have similar concerns about human marriages where one spouse controls all the assets? Or is it only when a human man respects an alien woman that you feel the need to intervene?" Fenmore's face went purple. He turned to the authority officer. "Document everything. We'll file a formal challenge to the asset transfer." "On what grounds?" The authority officer looked uncomfortable. Everything here appears legal. The registration is valid, the transfers are notarized, and frankly, Representative, I don't see any evidence of coercion. Quite the opposite. The alien woman has a name. Selveth's voice rang clear across the dusty yard. It's Selveth Tenora Holden. I am a legal resident of this planet, a registered citizen of the Terran Colonial Authority, and as of yesterday, a significant property owner in this sector. I suggest you address me accordingly. Silence fell. Then, from somewhere in the back of the crowd that had gathered, someone laughed. A warm, genuine sound. Others joined in, not mocking, appreciating. Well, an elderly woman's voice called out, I'd say she's handling herself just fine, Fenmore. Maybe you should leave the nice couple alone and go find some actual problems to solve. Scattered applause. Fenmore looked at the crowd, at the authority officer's shrug, at the news drone that was definitely live-streaming this entire debacle. This isn't over, he spat. Yes, it is, Donatello said calmly. And if you set foot on my property again without a warrant, I'll file harassment charges. Have a nice day, Representative. The transports departed 20 minutes later, trailing dust and wounded pride. That night, the story hit the colonial news networks. Dustfall Rancher's wedding gift shocks entire galaxy, the headlines blared. Human husband transfers millions to alien bride. Within hours, it had spread to interstellar feeds. Within days, it had sparked debates on a dozen worlds about human-alien relations, marriage contracts, and the nature of partnership. Selveth watched the coverage from the living room, curled in a chair by the window. Donatello sat across from her, steadfastly ignoring the screen. You planned this, she said. Planned what? The news drone, the public confrontation. You knew Fenmore would come, and you wanted witnesses. Donatello's mouth twitched. I might have mentioned to a few people that the council was sniffing around. Word gets around. You wanted this to be public. You wanted the whole galaxy to see. I wanted the whole galaxy to know you were free. He finally looked at her, so that no one could ever question whether you chose to be here. Selveth set down her tea. She stood, crossed the room, and settled beside him on the worn couch. You ridiculous man. I've been called worse. You gave away half your life's work. I gave it to my partner. She leaned against his shoulder. He went very still. I've finished deliberating, she said softly. And I choose you. She turned to face him. I choose this house. I choose this dusty, stubborn, beautiful world. I choose morning coffee and greenhouse tomatoes and arguing about equipment maintenance schedules. I choose being your partner in every sense of the word. Donatello's hand found hers. You're sure? I'm Valanthe. We don't make decisions we're not sure about. She kissed him then, the first time either of them had crossed that boundary. His lips were warm and slightly chapped from the dry air, and he kissed her back with careful tenderness, like she was something precious he was terrified of breaking. When they parted, his eyes were suspiciously bright. I love you, he said roughly. I know. She smiled. I love you too. That's what choosing means. Spring came to Dustfall in shades of copper and gold. The flowering scrub brush that dotted the desert burst into improbable blooms, orange and red and pink against the rust-colored sand. In the greenhouse, Selveth's experimental crops were thriving. A hybrid of Valanthe vegetables adapted to Terran soil conditions that Donatello swore would revolutionize the colony's food production. The news attention had faded, replaced by newer scandals and stories, but its effects lingered. The Colony Council had faced a recall election, with Fenmore losing his seat by a significant margin. Valanthe families from other worlds had begun inquiring about land purchases on Dustfall, encouraged by the success of what the media had dubbed the Holden model. Human-alien couples across the sector had come forward with their own stories of prejudice and perseverance. "Fan mail again," Murrick announced, dropping a datapad on the breakfast table. 12 messages today. 3 marriage proposals, 2 death threats, and someone wanting to know if you'll endorse their line of interspecies relationship supplements. "Delete all of them," Donatello muttered into his coffee. "Already done, boss. But you might want to look at this one." Murrick tapped the screen. "It's from her father." Selveth froze. She hadn't spoken to Delegate Vannon since the registration. He had sent messages, apologies, explanations, justifications, but she had deleted them unread. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too sharp. "What does he want?" Donatello asked quietly. "He's asking to visit." Murrick's voice was carefully neutral. "Says he wants to meet his daughter's husband, says he has something he needs to tell her in person." The kitchen fell silent. Selveth stared at the message, her reflection ghosting in the screen's surface. She saw echoes of her father in her own features, the shape of her brow, the set of her jaw. "You don't have to," Donatello said. "If you're not ready, I'll never be ready." She took a breath. "Tell him he can come. 3 days from now. He can stay one night." She looked at Donatello. "Will you be there? Try to keep me away." Delegate Vannon arrived looking older than his years. The lines in his face had deepened, his posture had curved, and his eyes held a weight that Selveth recognized as shame. They sat in the living room, Selveth and Donatello on the couch, Vannon in a chair across from them. Murrick had made himself scarce. "You look well, daughter." Vannon's voice was careful. "This world agrees with you." "This man agrees with me," Selveth corrected. "The world is just where we happen to live." Vannon's gaze shifted to Donatello. "You've taken good care of her." "She takes care of herself. I just try not to get in the way." A ghost of a smile crossed Vannon's face. "That sounds like something her mother would have said." The mention of her mother cracked something in Selveth's chest. "Why did you come, father?" Vannon was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I came to tell you the truth. The whole truth. Not the version I told myself to make the guilt bearable." He clasped his hands together. "Crassus Dane didn't approach me about the marriage. I approached him." Selveth felt Donatello's hand tighten on hers. "I knew we were going to lose the land. I knew there was no legal way to stop the foreclosure, so I went looking for other options, and Dane's name kept coming up as someone who could arrange things." Vannon's voice cracked. I told myself that marriage to a wealthy human would give you opportunities, security, a future off that dying rock I had trapped you on. You told yourself you were doing me a favor. I told myself a lot of things, none of them true." He looked up, eyes wet. "The truth is, I was scared of losing everything, scared of failing you the way I failed your mother by not being able to afford proper medical care, scared of watching you struggle the way I had struggled. And in my fear, I convinced myself that selling you would be saving you." The room felt very small. "It wasn't saving," Selveth said quietly. "It was betrayal." "Yes." Vannon's voice broke completely. "It was the worst thing I've ever done, and I will spend the rest of my life knowing that the only reason things turned out well was because of his character." He gestured at Donatello. "Not mine. If your husband had been the kind of man Dane usually brokers to, I would have destroyed you." Silence stretched between them. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Vannon continued. "I'm not sure I'd forgive me either, but I needed you to know that the fault was mine, not Dane's manipulation, not circumstances. Mine. Whatever anger you feel toward me is deserved." Selveth stood. She walked to the window and looked out at the amber sky. "I have been angry," she said, "for months. Every time I looked in the mirror and saw your features in my face, I felt sick. Every time I remembered that last transmission, you crying while you signed my life away, I wanted to scream. Vannon bowed his head. But anger is exhausting. She turned to face him. And I found something better to spend my energy on. A home, a partnership, a future I'm building with someone who respects me. She took a breath. I'm not ready to forgive you, Father. Maybe I never will be. But I'm ready to stop hating you. That has to be enough for now. Vannon stood slowly. For a moment he seemed about to reach for her, then stopped himself. It's more than I deserve. Yes, she agreed. It is. He left the next morning, quieter than he had arrived. At the door he paused and looked at Donatello. Thank you, he said, for being the man I failed to find for her. Donatello shook his head. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because she deserves to be happy, and I'm lucky enough to be part of that happiness. Vannon nodded and walked to his transport alone. Seasons passed. The ranch prospered. Selveth's hybrid crops became a colonial staple, and the mineral operations expanded under her efficient management. Donatello taught her to ride the desert skimmers, and she taught him Valanthy poetry. On the anniversary of their first year together, not their registration, but the day she had finally told him she chose him, they sat on the porch, watching the 3 moons rise. I've been thinking, Selvath said. Dangerous habit. I've been thinking about family. She glanced at him. About what it means to build one. Donatello went very still. Valanthy and humans are compatible, she continued. Genetically, I mean. It's been documented. The offspring tend to favor one species or the other, but they're viable. I know. His voice was careful. I looked it up, months ago. Didn't want to assume anything. You researched Valanthy human reproduction. I research everything. He turned to face her. Are you saying what I think you're saying? She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. I'm saying our family is about to get larger. For a moment, Donatello didn't move. Then his face transformed, wonder and terror and joy all tangled together, and he pulled her close with the desperate gentleness of a man who had lost everything once, and never expected to be given anything again. How long? He managed. 3 months, approximately. I wanted to be sure before I told you. 3 months? You've known for... He pulled back to look at her. And you didn't say anything? I was deliberating. Deliberating about what? She smiled. Whether I wanted to share you? He laughed, a real laugh, full and warm, and kissed her forehead. You ridiculous woman. I learned from a ridiculous man. They sat together as the moons climbed higher, watching the light play across the rust-colored landscape. In the greenhouse, tomatoes ripened on the vine. In the valley below, equipment hummed with the promise of profitable tomorrows. And in the house where fear had once lived, where a trembling bride had locked her door against a stranger, love had finally found a home. The entire galaxy had watched their story unfold. But the best parts, they kept for themselves. The end.